ドアを閉めます。ご注意ください。
出発進行。パイロット点灯。伝令よーし。進行。
お待たせいたしました。本日も名鉄をご利用くださいまして誠にありがとうございます。この電車は一宮名古屋方面に参ります。急行豊橋行きです。止まります駅は笠松、新木曽川、一宮、高宮、Shin-Kiyosu、須賀口、Sako、名古屋、金山、神宮前です。次は笠松です。皆様に新型コロナウイルス感染症対策に関するご案内です。名鉄ではお客様に安心してご利用いただくため、車内の換気装置などにより外の空気との入れ替えを行っております。また感染拡大防止のため駅や車内での会話は控えめにし、マスクを着用していただくとともに時差通勤等へのご協力をお願いいたします。
And with those announcements out the way, hello and welcome back to the Japan Sim World channel. Today we are back on the rails, playing the Sonic-powered title Japanese Rail Sim, operating the Meitetsu Line, known in Japan as鉄道にっぽん Real Pro Tokyu Soko Nagoya Hen, which is quite the title for any game, let alone a rail sim. But that's what we're playing today. This is the Steam version of the original Nintendo Switch title released, I think, a year prior to this one. This game on Steam is available outside of Japan, digitally, of course. The Switch version was only released in Japan, digitally and physically. There is a cartridge version of the game on the Switch, but if you're looking to get it outside of Japan, which you can do since the Switch is region-free, most likely you're probably going to have to import it from Japan, as they typically don't come up in other places as far as I've seen, based on experience.
まもなく笠松です。お出口は左側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。八町役所前方面竹浜線はお乗り換えです。笠松を出ますと次は新木曽川に停まります。
And of course, with any Japanese rail sim, our goal is to stop on time and on the mark. That is the objective at every station. So hopefully we can get this right. There we go, not bad. Not bad, 12 centimeters off, but we are 21 seconds ahead of schedule. So we get an A grade, which is actually not the highest grade. S grade is the highest grade here, so we still have room for improvement. Whoa, that train was moving real fast. Gave me a bit of a scare there.
次は新木曽川です。
So like I said before, this was originally released on Switch, and I have played this game before, actually, on this channel on the Switch. It was probably, I think it was the third video that I made. I did not drive this specific line, which we're driving. I believe this is the Nagoya Main Line. It's an express service because I believe we're skipping stations, so it's not the local service that stops at every station. But the line that we drove in the other video, I'll post it down below, was the Sky Airport Express, which went all the way out to Chubu Central Airport, just outside of Nagoya. And so yeah, we drove that. We didn't drive this in that game, so it's still a little bit of a different experience, despite me playing the same game. In addition to the fact that this is in addition to the fact that this is on Steam as opposed to the Switch. So still a bit different, but of course some similarities, obviously. I've actually never been to Nagoya, so I'm not all that familiar with this line, and or the city for that matter. But I'm curious. I'd like to go visit one day. If you're watching and you've been to Nagoya, if you've ridden these trains, feel free to comment down below your experience. I'd love to hear about it. And yeah, hopefully one day I'll get to go. I've always been curious about Nagoya. To me, it feels like the kind of middle child between Tokyo and Osaka. It's kind of in between, literally it is in between the two. Chubu, meaning central Japan. Osaka to the west, Tokyo to the east.
まもなく新木曽川です。お出口は左側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。
As I said, Nagoya, it kind of sits in the middle between Tokyo and Osaka. And kind of with that, people tend to kind of more or less pass through it on the way to either city. So probably doesn't get nearly as much attention and love as it should. Alright, not terrible. Not a terrible stop. Oh, 98 points. Let's see if we can do better moving forward. Let's see if we can get an S rank in our next next station. But yeah, like I said, I'd be curious. I know there's a Legoland in Nagoya, which I like Legoland. There's at least one. I don't remember if there's more than one in the US. I know there's several in Europe.
Yours.
次は一宮です。
I know the auto industry is pretty big here. I've heard Central Japan being called like the Detroit of Japan because of its auto industry being a predominant thing here. Matter of fact, I believe there were direct flights between Detroit and Nagoya for auto workers from one country visiting the other, which makes sense. One thing that's interesting about this game is they've got this graph off to the right that you could pretty much just follow that to try and keep your pace in line with what's expected in an effort to arrive on time. JRE's Train Simulator, Games Set to Go, they don't have these Sonic powered train sims, at least the recent ones I know for the Switch, and in this case for Steam, they all have these graphs. So I end up looking at the graph probably more than what's ahead, which I guess if you're on rails it's not the worst thing, but I guess at the same time it also takes away from the visual, because you're supposed to be enjoying the scenery more or less, which is tough to do in these train sims when you're trying to focus on getting there on time and stopping on the mark. Some people have complained that they're not a fan of the full motion video style of train sim that Sonic Power is kind of
ご
known
乗
for.
車ありがとうございました。まもなく一宮です。お出口は右側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。森上津島方面、玉乃井方面、備前線はお乗り換えです。一宮を出ますと、次は大宮に停まります。
So yeah, as I've said, I've seen comments on the Steam page for this game and other places where quite a few people aren't a fan of this style of train sim with the full motion video. They think maybe it takes away from the experience a little bit. Let's see. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. 22 centimeters. There we go. S grade. So anyways, as I've said, the full motion video, some people like it, others don't. I enjoy it. It really takes me back. It adds to the experience in that way, because I've physically been to Japan before, even though I've never been to Nagoya. But it gives you that warm, nostalgic feeling. So I like it for that.
ご乗車ありがとうございます。名古屋方面に参ります。急行豊橋行きです。次は大宮です。
It's interesting because I believe it's the Sonic Power games and JR East Train Simulator that use this FMV style. They said they go and other non-Japanese train sims don't do it this way. Everything is, computer generated. And, that's what some people prefer. Some people have compared this to just watching a movie where you control the speed. So you could consider this controller, which, by the way, I'm using again. And what was nice is that this is compatible with the Steam version, as you can see. So that's a nice add for sure. This certainly adds to the experience, as I've mentioned previously. But some people think with this FMV style that it's more like watching a movie with the train cab view to kind of complete the visual. You could, I guess, consider the throttle and brake here as like a play button where you control the speed more or less. Which is an interesting way to look at it. I certainly don't see it that way. To me, it really does feel immersive. It feels about as nice as any other train sim I've played, but like I said, I've seen some people who are not a fan of that, so there's certainly no shortage of these types of train sims made by Sonic Power especially. They've been making these types of games for a long time, actually going all the way back to the 3DS, where they have full motion video train sims on that system. And the controls for the train positioned on the bottom screen, which is actually pretty cool. They said the Go also had a DS release that worked similar, but again, it wasn't full motion video. I've taken a real liking to these games, as you can see on this channel.
まもなく大宮です。お出口は左側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。大宮を出ますと、次はShin-Kiyosuに停まります。
The Sonic Power is a big player in the Japanese train sim space, as well as the air traffic control sim space that I've also seen on this channel. Most, if not all, the Japanese ATC sims are made by Sonic Powered. I don't know of any other companies that have made those types of games. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments for sure. Alright, let's see if we can nail this stop. We got plenty of time, so I could probably just crawl. Probably not the ideal way to stop. Aw. 81 centimeters, not ideal. Not ideal, not ideal. This video is quite smooth though, I will say. Oh, there's a karaoke place off to the side there.
よし
次は新清洲新清洲です。
I think this full motion video here is not too bad. I remember it was a little bit grainier on the Switch. Maybe I didn't set it correctly. I think I could have set it to HD, but maybe I forgot to. Yeah, this visual is nice. This video, at least, it's a little shaky, I guess, a little bit jittery. Maybe to simulate the train vibration. I'm not sure. It's not as smooth as JRE's Train Simulator, and not as clear. You know, there is some level, I guess, of blur that I see, especially the faster we go. Like I said, for some players, it isn't for them not something that they're quite as fond of as like a full, you know, computer-generated graphics for the environment. But like I said, to me, it brings back that nostalgic feeling of seeing seeing literally the real thing in the game. It definitely brings back memories for sure. Even though I've never been to Nagoya specifically, but just that feeling of being in Japan. I think this type of train sim really does add to that feeling. Of course, this type of game is mainly aimed at the Japanese audience. Sonic Power made a lot of these train sims, but most of them are Japan-only releases. There are a small handful that they released in the U.S. For the Switch. There might be 2 or maybe 3 on the Switch, and then this one was released on Steam, of course, outside of Japan. I don't believe this was released on the Switch outside of Japan. But again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going off of what I remember. But yeah, I know that these train sims are mainly aimed at a Japanese audience, I believe. But, you know, I'm sure there's a sizable number of players who enjoy this outside. Even just people who love train sims.
まもなく新清洲新清洲です。お出口は左側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。
Let's see if we can do a better stop on this one. As I'm trying to follow the graph plus the rail visual. There's 2 different visuals. I'm actually not looking at the speed or distance, which is why I'm probably not doing as well as I should. Let's slow it down here. I gotta watch. I'll be careful which visual I watch here. That's not bad. Not terrible. Couldn't get me the S rank on this one. Like I've mentioned before, you know, real-life train drivers don't have any of these visual aids. They do it all on training, knowledge, and instinct. It's quite impressive. There's a reason why I'm not a pro train driver in Japan. I could barely do this with these visual aids, with the help, without the help. I'd be pretty lost, I think.
次はSukaguchiです。
But yeah, as I said before, this is a pretty fun game. It's enjoyable. Of course, it's really enjoyable with this controller that you see, that I used in the last video, or that I used in the last rail sim video.
まもなくSukaguchiです。お出口は右側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。対馬方面、対馬線はお乗り換えです。Sukaguchiを出ますと、次はSakoに停まります。
very nice. 5 centimeters. How too far ahead is all. Yeah, we're arriving too early. Arriving a little too early. Last game we were behind schedule. This game we're 2 ahead of schedule, and again, like I've said before, anything more than a few seconds too late or too early, even being too early is also a no-no, because it throws off the transfers. People rely on the precision of the schedules to not only get to where they're going, but also to transfer trains if they have to, which a lot of commuters do. If you're not sticking to the timetable, it throws off the entire system, and it cascades fairly rapidly throughout. So, yeah. Gotta get there exactly on time.
次はサコです。皆様に新型コロナウイルス感染症対策に関するご案内です。名鉄ではお客様に安心してご利用いただくため、車内の換気装置などにより外の空気との入れ替えを行っております。また、感染拡大防止のため、駅や車内での会話は控えめにし、マスクを着用していただくとともに、時差通勤等へのご協力をお願いいたします。この先、カーブがあります。列車の揺れにご注意ください。
The Steam game was only $8.99, I think, like $9 US, which is pretty inexpensive. The physical Switch game, on the other hand, is upwards of $60 to $70 US or more. And I believe the Steam game is not as complete from what I hear. I don't know exactly. I haven't played through the Steam game. So, interestingly, it's possible that the content on the Steam game, there may not be as much content on it as the Switch title. I believe they planned on releasing DLC for this game on Steam, but it doesn't look like they've gotten around to doing that. So that train that passed by us just crossed over. I wonder if they used that track. I wonder if they used that same track as well. So what would have happened if we had sped up? Would the game probably would have exited out, or probably would have stopped us, because if we had sped up, the possibility of us colliding with that train that had crossed over, that becomes a possibility at that point. So I'm guessing the game has ways of stopping us from going above the red line on that graph there. Probably either fails us out or an automatic train stop gets initiated. I'm not sure. I try to avoid getting hit by automatic train control. It's not fun. It's actually quite embarrassing. So. Oh, there goes the Shinkansen. I wonder which line it is. If that's I wonder if that's a Tokaido.
まもなくサコです。お出口は右側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。岩倉犬山方面犬山線はお乗り換えです。サコを出ますと次は名古屋に停まります。注意15場内
Ooh, not bad. not bad that time. We're still quite ahead of schedule, and that's what's really killing our score here. Is we're still getting there too early.
次は名古屋です。
Nagoya Station, I believe, is an important stop on this line. I believe there's quite a few transfers, as we'll most likely hear shortly from the in-train announcement.
ご乗車ありがとうございました。まもなく名古屋です。お出口は右側です。右側のドアに続き、左側、乗車側のドアも開きます。両側開きますドアと、お降りの際、お足元にご注意ください。福井、金沢、富山、松本、高山方面の高速バスと地下鉄線、近鉄線、JR、新幹線、青波線はお乗り換えです。車内にお手荷物のお忘れ物をなさいませんようお確かめください。名古屋を出ますと、次は金山に停まります。
Oh, we're not ahead of schedule this time. Hey, look at that. Only 5 seconds off, 18 centimeters. There we go. One thing that's interesting, there's quite a few different rail companies in Japan. JR is probably the one that people around the world are most familiar with, but certainly not the only player in the game, including this company, which is Meitetsu train that we're driving, short for Nagoya Railroad, I believe.
ご乗車ありがとうございます。東岡崎方面に参ります。急行豊橋行きです。次は金山です。
So yeah, as I mentioned, there's quite a few rail operators outside of Japan Rail, probably the most commonly known one, at least around the world. Even just within cities like Tokyo and Osaka, there's so many different rail companies, it's hard to keep track. This line included, which is a company's called Meitetsu. It's not a JR company, it's a separate company, and it simply means Nagoya Rail. But yeah, whether you go to Nagoya, Tokyo, Osaka, there's a lot of different rail companies, and all interconnected at the same time. It really is remarkable, the rail system in Japan. Also means there's certainly no shortage of ideas for train simulators from Japan, at least. That's for sure. And it's evident, again, as I mentioned, the amount of games that Sonic Powered has made, the amount of train sims that Sonic Powered has made, both for the 3DS and the Switch. And I think they're continuing to make new games each year, I believe. So, yeah, they're certainly not resting, that's for sure.
ご乗車ありがとうございました。まもなく金山です。お出口は右側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。地下鉄線 JR 線はお乗り換えです。車内にお手荷物のお忘れ物をなさいませんようお確かめください。金山を出ますと、次は神宮前に停まります。
not terrible. This might not get us a good score. Let's see. Okay. We haven't gotten that overrun, at least so far, so that's good. Oh dear. Oh, a little bit above the line there. Should probably slow it down. Let's see. There we go. Now we're keeping on the line.
ご乗車ありがとうございます。東岡崎方面に参ります。急行豊橋行きです。次は神宮前。神宮前です。
Yeah, like I said, this graph is helpful in making sure that we're going more or less the pace we're supposed to go. Although, interestingly, I feel like I followed the graph enough, but I'm still getting at the stations way too early, so I don't know if that's the game or maybe it's just something that I'm doing wrong. It's probably something I'm doing wrong, more than likely.
まもなく神宮前。神宮前です。お出口は右側です。開くドアから手を離してお待ちください。大田川、中部国際空港、港和、宇都宮方面、常滑線、空港線、本場線はお乗り換えです。神宮前を出ますと、次は名古屋本線堀田に停まります。停車です。停車です。
将来
Yeah, like I said, the graph is helpful, but I should be looking ahead like a real driver, real train driver, but I really do want to stop on time and on the mark. Let's see. Not bad. Not bad. Let's see. There we go. And oh, that's it. Alright, well, for this initial route, I think, looks like they're... Oh, I remember this video. This was a, we saw this in the previous video that we made of this game on the Nintendo Switch. And that's Chubu Airport, straight ahead. Also known as Central Japan Airport, what they call it. Of course, if you drive the Sky Express, you get to ride this portion. You get to drive this portion. Like I said, I'll post that other video in the description here. But yeah, it was a fun, short little journey on a portion, at least, of the Nagoya Main Line. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And so I guess we will end it here. Thank you very much for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Helps the channel a lot. And as always, more content to come on Japan Sim World. Please stay tuned.